This is The Bottom Line. The Bottom Line on 938 Live.
Now, the Ministry of Trade and Industry is forecasting the Singapore economy to grow 3% this year, following a revised growth of 2.8% in the third quarter. Meantime, total trade in Singapore declined by 3.5% in the third quarter. For more on the Singapore economy, we're joined now by Leong Wai Ho. He's a senior economist at Barclays. Now, Wai Ho, the economy grew 2.8% in the third quarter compared with a prior estimate of 2.4%. Was the upward revision a surprise for you?
Yes, a pleasant surprise. We think that this was probably on account of stronger manufacturing activity in September and partly payback for a much weaker Q2.
Now, manufacturing took an upturn in the third quarter. To what extent is this sustainable going forward?
I think this manufacturing resurgence will continue because Singapore is just starting to catch the U.S. acceleration in activity led by its resurgent investment cycle.
MTI says that economic growth will ease slightly for the rest of the year. How much of a concern is that for you, Wai Ho?
Not much, but I think it reflects a downside risk on services activity, but precipitated by mainly the weakening property cycle and also uncertain tourism outlook.
Now, i.e. Singapore has revised the total trade forecast for the full year to between 1.5 and 2%. It's a narrower range than the previous forecast of 1.5 to 2.5%. Why is this happening? Are Singapore exports suffering?
Well, not at all, but I think we're actually doing better than average. But I think it reflects a very challenging global environment that we face. A stronger U.S., but a weaker China, a weaker Euro, and also Japan trying to stimulate itself.
Now, yesterday, inflation for Singapore came in at 0.1% for October. How do you think this is affecting the economy, Wai Ho?
I think the lower inflation print of 0.1 should be seen as a one-off caused by very sharp negative distortions from COE prices. That subtracted alone 0.8 percentage points from headline CPI. I think core, which is printing at around 1.7% steady, is a much more reflective gauge of how inflation feels like in Singapore. So it's not deflation.
Now, the central banks of China, Japan and Europe have been looking to stimulate their economies. Should export-driven economies in Asia be worried about demand?
I don't think at this stage we should be that worried because these actions tell us that these economies are doing more to stimulate growth in the medium term, reducing the threat of deflation. I would only be worried if these economies did not use the time and space bought by this stimulus to actually repair their economy structurally. So not at this stage.
Thank you very much, Wai Ho. Leong Wai Ho, senior economist at Barclays. Thanks for joining us on The Bottom Line, brought to you by Turkish Airlines, Europe's best airline.